She found her victim on Instagram. They looked identical. Same face, same eyes, same build. Within weeks, one of them was dead, and the other one was trying to become her. It was 2023, the city of Ingolstadt, Germany, a quiet evening, and then a phone call that would send investigators into one of the most disturbing cases they had ever encountered. A body had been found. Now, detectives see bodies. That is, unfortunately, part of the work. But what stopped every single officer at that scene, what made experienced investigators go completely silent, was not the body itself, it was who the body was supposed to be. Because according to every document at the scene, every piece of identification, every deliberate clue left behind, the woman lying dead in that German city was someone who was still very much alive. This is a story about obsession, about desperation, about a woman who looked into a mirror, saw a stranger's face, and decided that stranger needed to die. This is the story of Sharaban K. and the woman she found on Instagram, and the plan she built with ice-cold precision over months, a plan that almost worked. Stay with me, because nothing about this case is what it first appears to be. To understand how someone arrives at a decision this dark, you have to understand the life they were trying to escape. Sharaban K. was a young woman living in Germany. On the surface, ordinary, a life like millions of others. But beneath that surface, her world was collapsing. Her marriage was falling apart. The weight of debt pressed down on her daily. She felt cornered, trapped, and not just emotionally trapped. She was looking for a way out that went far beyond packing a bag and leaving. She didn't just want to start over. She wanted to disappear. Completely, legally, permanently. Now, you and I, if we reach that breaking point, we might move to another city, change jobs, cut contact, but there's always a thread, always a name, always a history that follows you like a shadow, no matter how fast you run. Sharaban understood this, and that understanding, that cold, calculating awareness, is what made her dangerous. Because the plan she began forming wasn't born from rage. It wasn't an impulse. It was a solution, a logical, methodical, horrifying solution to her problem. She needed someone to die in her place, someone whose death would be recorded, identified, and filed away as Sharaban K., leaving Sharaban herself free to walk away and become someone else entirely. She needed a doppelganger. But finding someone who looks exactly like you, that sounds impossible, right? In 2023, it took her less than a week. Here is the part of this story that will change the way you think about social media. Sharaban did not hire a private investigator. She did not access government records. She did not travel through criminal networks. She opened Instagram. Think about that for a moment. The same platform where you share your photos, your travels, your daily life was used as a hunting ground. Sharaban scrolled through thousands of faces, comparing features with clinical precision: jawline, eye shape, height, build, skin tone. And then she stopped scrolling. Her name was Khadija O., a young woman, living her life, posting photos like the rest of us, completely unaware that somewhere, someone had just found her page, and that someone was studying her face like a blueprint. By every account, by investigators who later compared photographs, by witnesses who knew both women, Khadija and Sharaban were nearly identical. Same facial structure, same general build, the kind of resemblance that makes strangers stop and stare. Sharaban had found her doppelganger, and now she had to get close to her. She reached out, friendly, warm, perhaps even playful about the uncanny resemblance between them. And why wouldn't Khadija respond? Finding someone who looks just like you, it's the stuff of movies, of curiosity, of wonder. Over the weeks that followed, Shahraban built a friendship, carefully, patiently. She made Khadija feel seen, feel liked, feel safe. And then she extended the invitation. Come visit me, in Germany. We'll finally meet in person. Khadija said yes.
Now, before I tell you what happened when Khadija arrived, I need you to understand one thing investigators discovered later. Something on Shahraban's phone. Something that proved this was not a decision made in a moment of madness. This was a plan months in the making. And I'll show you exactly what they found. But first, let me tell you what happened at that meeting. Khadija O. traveled to Ingolstadt, Germany in good faith. She was going to meet a friend, someone she had spoken to for weeks, someone who felt familiar. What happened inside that meeting, the exact sequence of events, is what investigators spent weeks reconstructing from evidence, forensics, and digital records. What they determined was this: Khadija O. was murdered. Not in a moment of rage, not accidentally, with the kind of cold deliberation that tells you the decision had been made long before Khadija ever boarded that flight. But the murder was only part of what Shahraban had planned, because here is what separated this from almost every other case in modern European crime history. After Khadija was dead, Shahraban attempted to destroy her identity. She needed that body, the body of a young woman who trusted her, to be identified by police as Shahraban K., dead, confirmed, filed. This required removing anything that would allow forensic investigators to identify the true victim. It required deliberate, calculated post-mortem staging. Take a moment to let that sink in. She didn't just murder someone, she tried to erase that person from existence and replace her with herself. If the plan had worked, Khadija O. would have been buried under Shahraban's name. Her family left wondering what happened to their daughter. Her life was reduced to a file, a case closed, a death certificate bearing the wrong name. And Shahraban would have walked away, new identity, clean slate, free.
It should have worked. It didn't. One mistake, that's all it took, and it came from the one place Shahraban never thought to check. When police arrived at the scene, something felt immediately wrong. Experienced investigators develop a sense, call it instinct, call it pattern recognition, when a crime scene has been staged. The attempts to obscure the victim's identity were visible, but visible attempts at concealment are themselves a message. You don't do that unless you're afraid of what the body can reveal. The forensic team went to work, and despite Shahraban's efforts, the science held. Through forensic identification methods, investigators were able to establish the true identity of the victim. This was not Shahraban K. lying dead in that apartment. This was Khadija O., a young woman from a completely different background, a young woman who had come to Germany to meet a friend. And now, the digital trail. Remember the phone. Remember what I told you investigators found. Shahraban had documented her own plan. The Instagram searches, the profile views, the weeks of messages building a false friendship with Khadija. Every step of the calculation was sitting in her phone, preserved with the same permanence as a signed confession. She had used Instagram to find her victim, and Instagram, with all its metadata, timestamps, and message history, handed the case to investigators on a silver platter. The manhunt was launched immediately, because if the body was not Shahraban, then Shahraban was alive, and she was running. She didn't get far. Whatever escape plan Shahraban had constructed for herself after the murder fell apart under the speed and precision of the investigation. She was apprehended, and the interrogation that followed stretched for hours. At first, she denied everything. Of course she did. But when investigators laid the evidence in front of her, the forensic identification, the digital records, the message history, the witness accounts, her story collapsed, piece by piece, word by word. In 2024, Shahraban K. stood trial in a German court for the murder of Khadija O. The prosecution delivered their case with devastating precision. Not just the murder, but the months of planning,
The deliberate selection of a victim, the manipulation, the calculated cruelty of luring someone across an international border under the pretense of friendship, only to take her life. The family of Khadija O. sat in that courtroom and listened to their daughter's final months described in clinical, documented detail. They had spent months not knowing what had happened to her. They had filed missing person reports. They had waited. They had grieved in uncertainty, which is, in many ways, the cruelest kind of grief. And then the verdict. Guilty. Shahraban K. was convicted of the murder of Khadija O. Here is what stays with me. Long after the verdict, long after the headlines moved on, Khadija O. did nothing wrong. She responded to a message from a stranger who shared her face. She was curious. She was friendly. She was human. She boarded a flight with nothing but good intentions, and that was enough. That was all it took. We live in a world now where we post our faces online every single day, where strangers can find us, study us, compare us from anywhere in the world through photographs we share freely, believing that distance and anonymity protect us. This case is a brutal reminder that they don't. Shahraban K. did not find her victim in a dark alley. She did not follow her through the streets. She found her from the comfort of her own home, through a platform that billions of people use right now, today, without a second thought. The doppelganger effect has always fascinated human beings. Literature, mythology, folklore, the idea of meeting your exact double has been called an omen, a wonder, a gift. In this case, for Khadija O., it was a death sentence.
Justice was served, but justice never gives back what was taken. It never returns the years. It never replaces the voice. It never fills the chair at the table that stays empty long after a verdict is read. Khadija O. deserved to live her life. She deserved the warmth of people who cared about her, genuinely. She deserved to grow old. She deserved everything that was taken from her by someone who saw her not as a human being, but as a solution. If this story moved you, if it made you think, if it made you angry, if it made you hold someone you love a little tighter tonight, then please share this video. Not for the views, for Khadija. So her story reaches as many people as possible, so her name is remembered, not as a victim in a file, but as a person who deserved so much more than what she got. I'm Black Noir Files, original documentaries every week, stories that uncover the truth, shock the mind, and linger long after the screen goes dark. Subscribe, because the truth is out there, and we're not done looking for it.